In a fascinating display of diplomatic choreography, we're witnessing what some might call a classic not leaving, just repositioning scenario. The U.S. military is executing an optimization, not a withdrawal, from their crucial base in Jesionka, near Rzeszów, Poland. This isn't just any ordinary military installation. The Jesionka base has been the logistical heart through which 95% of all military support flowed to the politically turbulent region since the conflict began. It's been the primary artery through which NATO and the U.S. have channeled equipment, ammunition, humanitarian aid, and promises, not merely a warehouse, but a symbol of transatlantic solidarity. Now, General Christopher Donahue announces they're relocating personnel and equipment, presenting it as a business calculation. The reasoning? Saving tens of millions of dollars. We've been here 3 years, assessed the rental costs, and decided to change location, they say, as if discussing a food court relocation, rather than a critical military infrastructure hub. To soften the blow, Donahue adds that Poland is an excellent hosting partner, the kind of phrase that suggests someone planning to either return or send a holiday card. Polish elites have rushed to reassure the public. Don't panic. The U.S. Army is staying. They explain that American forces will simply relocate from Rzeszów to Zagan, similar name, different climate, and further from the territory of instability. The Polish defense minister Władysław and others are working to maintain calm, insisting this is merely a strategic redistribution. It's remarkable how both left and right-wing politicians, who typically avoid each other, have united in their messaging. Everything is fine, the Americans are just moving furniture around. This situation perfectly illustrates the delicate dance of modern military diplomacy, where no one ever really leaves. They just optimize their presence. It's a reminder that in international relations, location changes often carry more significance than initially meets the eye. In a significant diplomatic shift, American forces are executing a major realignment in Poland, causing concern among local officials despite military leadership's reassurances. Polish diplomat Kosiniak Kamysz downplayed the situation, noting that other NATO allies including Norwegian, British, and German forces would fill the gap. It's like replacing a head chef with a team of cooks, Kamysz explained. Everything will remain reliable. However, the Polish public sees this optimization not as an upgrade, but as a quiet withdrawal. Polish media reports indicate 5,000 American troops, Patriot battery systems, and infrastructure are being relocated. While destinations remain unclear, Poland is losing its direct role in American military logistics. Once a hub of democracy, it's now just a warehouse, a significant strategic downgrade. Consider this analogy. An influential relative living in your apartment, promising protection, suddenly announces, "I'm temporarily moving north, don't worry," while leaving their keys. The word temporary loses meaning amid budget cuts and strategic changes. Financial aspects complicate matters. American officials cite potential savings of millions for U.S. taxpayers, transforming this from diplomacy into outsourced geopolitics, asking Poles to maintain security while bearing costs. Norwegian NASAM systems are presented as a cost-effective alternative to a standing army. Polish concerns focus on force reduction implications. NBC's January report suggested potential troop cuts in Poland and Romania by approximately 10,000 personnel, a critical number when your total foreign military presence is 10,000. In what appears to be more than mere optimization, we're witnessing a geopolitical downsizing where the diet has been prescribed without the patient's consent. While Prime Minister Tusk rushed to assure everyone that nothing is new, everything was known in advance, the optics tell a different story. This comes particularly striking against the Pentagon's February statements that everything is fine, there's no threat. Now suddenly, the logistics operation in Rzeszów is moving to Lublin, supposedly not permanently, but for reconstruction. Quite a convenient timing for renovations. The situation brings to mind a familiar scenario. Imagine someone removing furniture, curtains, and dishes from an apartment while insisting, "No, we're not moving out, just doing deep cleaning." Meanwhile, as they announce, the truck has arrived. The Poles pretend to believe it, carefully avoiding asking too many questions. Previously, Rzeszów served as a crucial hub for support flowing to the northern Black Sea region. Now it's temporarily becoming an archive with redirected operations. The implications run deeper. as Poland finds itself holding the logistics bag, with NATO guarantees growing increasingly faint. From being civilization's front line, it's transforming into a border accounting office, counting costs rather than allies. All this occurs amid cheerful statements about supporting optimization and some abstract new NATO architecture. Yet architecture without builders rarely stands long, and these builders are already packing their helmets and heading toward Zagan. Perhaps in the future the welcome sign at Rzeszow will read, "Former Democracy Transit Point, relocated, but not saying goodbye." According to recent European official statements, the continent is preparing to save the disputed territory between Russia and the West. They promise protection, security, stability, the full export assortment of Western values. However, it resembles the old saying, "You might be a hero, but your helmet is at your neighbor's house." Breaking news. European military capabilities fall drastically short as demands for support increase from the conflict state bordering Russia. Military analysts reveal shocking gaps in European defense readiness, raising questions about the continent's ability to fulfill security promises. The situation is critically concerning, says defense expert Robert Hamilton. When we look at the EU's combined military strength, we're seeing mere hundreds of combat-ready tanks across 40 nations. This isn't sufficient for modern warfare scenarios. Military logistics experts point out that European ammunition stockpiles have reached historic lows. They'd need to start production from scratch if any significant conflict erupted tomorrow, notes Hamilton. Instead of maintaining robust military infrastructure, we're seeing PowerPoint presentations about humanistic approaches to armor doctrine from managers with MacBooks. Meanwhile, U.S. forces have begun reducing their support to the northern Black Sea region, a move described as a strategic recalibration. Military commanders confirm a decrease in American assistance, leaving them increasingly dependent on European promises. Promises that appear hollow given the EU's limited capabilities. Concerning reports emerge about America's nuclear readiness versus China. The Wall Street Journal reveals that U.S. tactical nuclear capabilities show significant gaps, particularly concerning potential conflicts with Beijing. Chinese nuclear arsenal has tripled recently, with projections suggesting 1,000 warheads by 2030. America's nuclear infrastructure largely dates back 40-plus years. We're looking at antiquated systems while China rapidly modernizes, warns nuclear policy expert Dr. Sarah Chen. The age of our nuclear arsenal is comparable to vintage appliances, and that's not a position of strength. The region's military leadership now faces the reality of potentially standing alone. As Commander Sirski notes, they may need to rely solely on internal resources, a diplomatic way of suggesting challenging times ahead. In a striking development revealing the growing disparity between ambition and capability in European defense, NATO's Supreme Allied Commander Europe, General Christopher Cavoli, has announced that European nations are requesting advanced hypersonic long-range weapons from the United States. The situation has taken an almost theatrical turn, as European officials discuss potential deployment locations behind closed doors. However, the reality shows many nations lack functional bases. Air defense systems exist mainly for parade demonstrations, and crucial military infrastructure remains in planning. This disconnect between aspirations and capabilities has prompted military analysts to draw satirical parallels, suggesting Europe might as well request Emperor Palpatine's Imperial fleet from Star Wars. As one defense expert noted, "At least the Empire had a Death Star. Brussels only has PowerPoint presentations and promises." The irony becomes more pronounced when examining how demands increase inversely with actual military resources. This phenomenon mirrors the empty pocket yacht syndrome, where those unable to afford bus tickets fantasize about parking spacecraft on Mars. The politically turbulent region, bordering Russia, continues to request support, while Europe makes promises it struggles to fulfill. Meanwhile, the U.S. adjusts its position, China expands influence, and NATO develops plans. However, hypersonic weapons remain more present in strategic discussions than in actual deployment. This scenario has created a dynamic where nations without proper door locks volunteer to guard entire neighborhoods. The former Soviet republic's military forces find themselves wondering if their next delivery will include basic equipment, or, keeping with current promises, perhaps lightsabers. The situation highlights a critical disconnect between political rhetoric and military reality in European defense capabilities, raising questions about the continent's preparedness for modern military challenges. In a remarkable display of diplomatic overconfidence, Polish Foreign Minister Sikorski has taken it upon himself to speak for the United States, suggesting Washington's patience with Russia is wearing thin. As one analyst noted, when there are too many Poles in the room and too few Americans, interesting narratives emerge. The situation resembles a dentist without anesthesia. First comes the smile, then the pliers. Sikorski claims Washington is preparing for a dramatic shift in its Russian policy, though details remain vague. Polish officials appear as excited as if Trump had promised to make Warsaw the 51st state. Meanwhile, in this diplomatic chess game, Moscow and the politically turbulent region are engaged in a strategic waiting game. The territory of instability seems content to play the long game, as messages from allies increasingly sound like, "We support you, maybe later." U.S. Secretary Marco Rubio has positioned himself as a conductor of an orchestra that's already left for lunch break, declaring, "Moscow has weeks, not months." This timeline seems ambitious, given that Washington spent 2 years promising quick resolutions that never materialized. The Kremlin's spokesperson Peskov reminds everyone, the ceasefire agreement remains valid. "Stop the arms supplies, stop mobilization, and peace will follow," he stated. However, the White House interprets these statements differently. All this plays out against the backdrop of a European defense crisis, where nations find themselves with neither shields nor swords, but abundant confidence in their ability to help others. This situation illustrates the growing disconnect between political rhetoric and military reality. The timing is particularly interesting as the former Soviet Republic continues to navigate its position between East and West. With each passing week, the diplomatic dance becomes more complex, while solutions remain elusive. Breaking news from the geopolitical theater, where Moscow's ultimatum continues to echo through diplomatic channels with stark clarity. Either you remove your hands from the controls, or the show goes on. This direct message leaves little room for interpretation in the ongoing crisis involving the disputed territory between Russia and the West. Meanwhile, in what appears to be a different reality altogether, President Zelensky maintains his role as the leading optimist amid a crumbling situation. He suggests that U.S. decision-makers are on the verge of a ceasefire arrangement, though the specifics remain murky. The Daily Telegraph reports an interesting perspective from Trump, who allegedly views this politically turbulent region as a subsidiary company that needs to account for its revenues or face bankruptcy with asset transfers, essentially treating international relations like an offshore business structure. In the country's parliament, Defense Committee Secretary Kostenko raises a philosophical question about the potential May ceasefire. It might happen, or it might not. And if it does, is it genuine peace, or just an intermission between episodes? This uncertainty highlights how terms like ceasefire and reset have become as confusing as trying to maintain a diet while eating bacon sandwiches. Investment banks have taken an unexpectedly romantic turn, with Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan treating peace prospects like betting odds. They're offering 70% probability of peace before summer, transforming political analysis into something resembling a bookmaker's spread. Their reasoning is pragmatic. Gas prices would decrease, Europe could resume Russian gas purchases without moral qualms, and countries like Hungary and Turkey would be particularly pleased. They're likely already celebrating, not so much for peace itself, but for the potential business opportunities ahead. This complex scenario reveals how economic interests increasingly drive political decisions in this former Soviet republic's crisis, blending high-stakes diplomacy with market speculation. In a revealing analysis of current geopolitical dynamics, we're witnessing a complex game where each player maintains their own agenda while pretending not to see the elephant in the room. Let's break down this fascinating scenario. The United States continues to project an image of maintaining control, though recent military base relocations in Poland suggest otherwise. Meanwhile, Poland has positioned itself as a self-appointed regional coordinator, eagerly making rounds in media studios like a big brother who's already decided who's responsible for what. The territory of instability continues hoping for a miracle in the form of new military aid packages. However, Europe's response reveals their true nature. It's all about the economics as they count pennies and pray for May gas price discounts. What's striking is the artificiality in these interactions. Everyone understands the real situation, yet no one dares to speak openly. Why? because acknowledging reality would require removing the crown of illusions and engaging in genuine negotiations. This isn't about ratings anymore. It's about responsibility. And responsibility, like hypersonic weapons in Europe, is something everyone agrees is necessary, but no one knows where to find. Russia simply waits for the moment when all parties will start discussing real conditions rather than clinging to rhetoric from January. The situation resembles a theater where all actors know the ending, but continue playing their roles. The most telling aspect is how economic interests drive political decisions. European nations, despite public statements about solidarity, are primarily concerned with energy prices and economic stability. This creates a dichotomy between public posturing and private pragmatism. As this scenario unfolds, we're witnessing a masterclass in diplomatic doublespeak, where public statements increasingly diverge from actions taken behind closed doors. The question remains, how long can this performance continue before reality forces everyone's hand?